We're coming into the promotion board season, and I thought it was a good opportunity to spend some time and talk about the process. Whenever I talk to soldiers, I always get questions. Sergeant Major, how do I get promoted? How do I progress in my military career? And one thing I want everybody to remember, promotions are not a reward for past performance. Yes, your past performance does set you up for success when you go before a promotion board, but that's not what they're for. A promotion is really a recognition by the Army and your ability to take on the additional responsibilities of that higher grade. Yes, we're going to compensate you for it, but that's really what a promotion is all about, is that opportunity for you to take on more responsibilities. One of the other things that's really important for you to remember in promotions is there has to be a vacancy. Whether it's at the Sergeant E5 or Staff Sergeant or Sergeant First Class, there has to be a vacancy within your primary MOS for you to get promoted. As we go through the board process, remember the board process itself isn't there to determine whether or not you should or should not be promoted. Your unit leadership has already made that decision. They've already said that yes, you have the ability to take on those additional responsibilities. So all the board does is set the Order of Merit list, or the OML, and that the board determines the sequence that you're going to get promoted in. The boards are conducted annually each year, and so each year, you may show up, if you didn't get promoted last year, you may have been number 1 or number 2 last year, but when the board reconvenes this year, you may drop to 3 or 4. Conversely, you may have been 3rd or 4th on the OML last year, and the board convenes this year and you may jump to number 1. So it really depends on what happens each year. But as you're preparing for the board, when I've looked at the last 5 or 6 years of processes here in Massachusetts, the board doesn't look at different things every year. When we look at the way the board's conducted every year, everything's the same. What really changes year to year, which could affect your ranking on the OML, is the charge to the board, right? Which is something that the Adjutant General and I provide the board members with what our needs are as a Massachusetts National Guard, what our needs are for the next 12 to 18 months in our NCO Corps. We also look at some of the things that we're going to talk about, and they may be weighted differently every year based on the board. So when we talk about some of the things that are really important for you to remember as you're getting ready for the board, NCOERs. The board's going to look at your last 3 to 5 years worth of NCOERs. And so when you're looking at your NCOERs, your raters and your senior raters, the comments that they've made in there, are they quantifiable, or are they just very, very generic? Does it really show what you've done and your abilities to take on? With your senior rater comments, all your senior rater comments should not focus on what you did last year, but your future potential. And that's really key. Military education. Do you have all your military education for your current grade? You wouldn't be eligible for promotion if you didn't, but we want to make sure that you've got your military education. That includes SSD, your structured self-development. Some of the other things that the board looks at is how long has it been since you last went to a PME course, to a military course? How did you perform in your last couple of courses in the last 3 to 5 years? Were you the honor graduate? Were you on the commandant's list? Did you fail at any point in the last couple of years, or did you have to withdraw from a PME? Those are all things that the board's going to look at. Commendations. Have you received any kind of commendation over the last couple of years? What level of state or federal awards did you receive? Was it an ARCOM? Was it an Army Achievement Medal? Was it a state commendation medal? All these things come into play when we go through the board process. What was the reason for the award? How long ago did you get it? Individual readiness is key. What's your history of performance on your fitness tests? Are you within the regulatory guidelines? For AGR soldiers, have you taken it, once every 6 months? For an M-Day soldier, have you been taking it annually? Have you consistently passed? Or do you have a history of failures and then maybe just passing right before the test? Body composition, same thing, where the board's going to look at the last 3 to 5 years of your performance. Are you consistently within standards, or do we see a fluctuation and up and down? Your individual weapons qualification. Are you current on your PHA? Are you current on dental? Is your security clearance up to date and valid? These are all things that the board's going to look at. Civilian education is important as well. Even though there's no requirement for a non-commissioned officer to have any kind of education beyond high school, to go to college, right, makes you more competitive against your peers. So the board looks at that. One of the things that I see soldiers often make mistakes on is a soldier may be enrolled in college, but they're waiting until they get their degree and finish before submitting their transcripts. Highly encourage soldiers that every semester when you get your transcripts from your college or university, submit those transcripts, right? Because the board sees that. They see that you're working towards a degree, and they see how long it's been since you've been in school. So those all go towards the board. How much experience do you have in your primary MOS? If you've just reclassed, from, an 11 Bravo to say an 88 Mike in the last 6 months, and you want to be considered in the 88 Mike career field, you don't have a lot of experience within that career field, so you may not rank as high when it comes to experience within the MOS. On the flip side, if you've been in that MOS and you've got some significant experience, that's going to go a long way on the board. Same thing with broadening assignments. There's a lot of soldiers that kind of don't want to take some of those broadening assignments or the 00 Fox positions, the MOS and material jobs. That is huge when it comes to the board, because it's showing that you as a soldier are trying to grow and you're trying to get better as an individual. So I encourage you to take some of those broadening assignments. Don't spend forever there. Don't spend more than 3 or 4 years in one of those broadening assignments, but definitely reach out and try to get some different opportunities outside of your primary MOS. Your packet composition, when you put that packet together, is it complete? Is it according to the MOI? One of the things that we see often every year with packet composition is the date of your last DA photo. Yes, the Army no longer looks at DA photos on promotion boards. However, the date of your last photo is still listed on your enlisted record brief. So the board looks at that. And if you were promoted to staff sergeant 2 years ago and your last DA photo was 6 years ago, the board knows that your DA photo is probably wearing E5 stripes. So make sure those photos are up to date and current. Has your ERB been validated in the last 12 months? As a soldier, you're responsible for your own records. So you should be looking at your records every year and validating that ERB within the last 12 months so that we know as board members that it is completely accurate. Now let's face it, right? The Army is not perfect. We're people, we're not perfect. And so there's going to be mistakes in your records. There's going to be documents that maybe you tried to submit and haven't shown up in your records. Maybe you were one of those soldiers that you had a bad stretch and you failed an ACFT or you failed body composition. That's okay, it's not a career ender. Every board that we do, whether it's promotion board, a qualitative retention board, active service management board, allows the soldier to write a letter to the board to address some of those issues. So if you've got a missing NCOER, if you failed an ACFT at one point, this is your opportunity to tell the board what happened and what you're doing to correct it. I can't stress that part of enough, that too often soldiers get ranked low on the OML because there was some discrepancy in their records and they didn't take the opportunity to address that with the board. As we go through the board process, we just talked about a lot of things that the boards will look at. Not meant to be all-inclusive, but those are the big-ticket items. If you're looking at those items every year and making sure your records are straight, you'll do well on the promotion board. One thing that you always have to remember, and I said it briefly a minute ago, you are your best career manager. Remember, this isn't an opportunity for us to recognize you for past performance. It's an opportunity for us as an agency to recognize your potential to serve at the higher grade. Show that you're ready to take on that responsibility. If you want to learn more, about how the board process works. It's not a bunch of sergeants major, sitting behind, a locked door with a smoke-filled room and drinking whiskey. Take the opportunity to volunteer and serve on one of these boards, whether as a voting board member or as a recorder. Because I'll tell you, even those recorders, even though they don't necessarily have a seat at the table, they do have a seat in the room, and they can see how the board functions, and they can see how the board operates. And they hear what the board members have to say. The last thing I just want to close with this is you have to remember is that wherever you're at in your military career, whether you're on your first term enlistment or if you're like me, you've been doing this for a couple of years, we're all going to have a last day in uniform, every one of us. And the question I have for you is what do you want to be doing that day you take the uniform off for the last time? Not the day after, but the day you come to work and put that uniform on for the last time. What position do you want to be in? If you don't know how the promotion system works, how are you going to be effective at achieving your goals? Right? I wish you all the best of luck this year on the process. If you have any questions, please reach out to your NCO support channel. Thanks.